Hi, welcome to SBR Sports Picks. My name is Peter Loshak. Today is Thursday, July 12th, and we have UFC Fight Night 133 coming up this weekend from Boise, Idaho. We're going to analyze the main card from a betting and odds perspective with our regular returning guest, MMA and boxing expert analyst, Andreas Hale. Andreas Hale, thanks for being back with us one more time. This is a very, very interesting and kind of weird card. We have more than one favorite with a big name off of a long layoff, JDS and Chad Mendes. And then we have another interesting fight, Otto against Sage Northcutt. Sage Northcutt, of course, had a ton of hype surrounding him, and then he fell flat after his debut in the UFC. And then we have Dennis Bermudez, a big favorite, who's 2-5 in his last 7 fights overall. So it's kind of a weird, quirky card. Wouldn't you say that?
I would absolutely agree. This is kind of one of those cards that happens after a big event like we had last week, and they kind of throw these fights together, and they're interesting, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
Like you said, we got named the long layoffs, we got big favorites, we got a couple of surprising underdogs too. So yeah, this is one to dissect.
All right, and then of course we have that Katzengano fight as well, going up against Renault, who's 41 years old and a mom. So let's start, I guess, with the two main events, with the co-main events. Ivanov against JDS. JDS is a pretty decent sized favorite. When I analyzed this, he was at minus 185. Now he's gotten bet down a little bit. And again, JDS is off of obviously an awesome heavyweight, but off a long layoff. He suffered some pretty substantial losses over the last few years, and then not exactly sure what to expect from Ivanov here. It is his UFC debut. He has some big upside on paper, but he's obviously going to be facing the toughest heavyweight of his career, and he's never really been able to beat a big true legit top heavyweight. He had a loss to Alexander Volkov, the only true top heavyweight that he's ever met in his career. So maybe there are some questions about his overall skill level. Is Ivanov on the level with JDS, where he should be a relatively competitive underdog here?
No, I don't see it. And I've watched Ivanov fight, and guys, as we've seen, the guys that have come over from World Series of Fighting haven't necessarily translated when they face the upper echelon of UFC fighters. You look at Justin Gaethje, you look at David Branch, the 2-division champion of World Series of Fighting. Ivanov falls in that category, and I've watched him fight. He's nothing special. JDS is an acclimated kickboxer with great talent and great skills. Sure, he lost Stipe Miocic, but that was the champ, but probably the greatest heavyweight champ that we had of all time. The USADA suspension does hurt a little bit because he's a little older, but it could keep him fresh, too. It could keep him injury-free. So I don't think, there's much for JDS to worry about here, and I'm surprised he's not a bigger favorite, and it seems like he's getting bet down because they figured that he could get knocked out. I just don't see it. Technique-wise, JDS is just a much better talent.
Yeah, he has gotten bet down a little bit. Ivanov was about plus 160 or so a few days ago. Now he's down to a 150, 135 at bookmaker. So you would just disregard the layoff for JDS and some of the losses against obviously elite heavyweights that he suffered over the past few years, and you would say that people are just probably just looking at the records of these guys. Ivanov obviously has a very impressive win-loss record straight up, and thinking that Ivanov has a much better chance here than he actually does.
Yeah, it's a little bizarre. If you watch Ivanov fight, he's a little sloppy. He comes in with his chin held high. He's got all the tools for JDS to knock him out. But again, people are looking at those records, like you said. They see the one loss, Alexander Volkov, but there's a bunch of names that you never heard of. In other promotions, heavyweight is relatively thin. You don't see a lot of great talent there. UFC still has the best heavyweight, so I don't see Ivanov being very competitive in this fight. I like JDS a lot. The layoff might actually hurt him because I know he was dealing with some injuries in the past. So I think this should be an easy bet. I'm taking JDS all the way here. All
right. The line right now has gotten bet down, as you said. It's now minus 170 at a bunch of places. We don't have the totals out yet, but at 5 dimes, I do have the props for the fights to go the distance. And, of course, it's scheduled for 5 rounds. And the fight not going the distance is minus 270. And I'm thinking that if there's any way Ivanov wins, it's from a finish. And if Ivanov loses, probably JDS gets a stoppage as well. I'm thinking that the fight not going the distance at minus 270 might actually be a nice bet, and when the total comes out, maybe the under.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this fight doesn't go the distance. Unless we have something bizarre happen like Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou last week, where 2 guys just stare at each other for 5 rounds. But I just don't necessarily see that. We got 2 guys that like to strike. We got JDS who likes to strike, and he needs to make a statement now that Brock Lesnar's kind of jumped over everybody to get a heavyweight title shot. So JDS has something to prove here. So one way or another, I don't see this thing going the distance at all.
Yeah. So if you like JDS to win here, what's the most likely result? You think, like an early knockout? Like what do you think is going to happen most likely?
I think he's going to punish him. So I would predict a second or third round knockout here.
Second or third round knockout. All right, that's what I'm thinking as well. I'm thinking that the fight not going the distance might have some value, and I think I'm going to wait to see what the total is when it comes out. I'm assuming it'll be about 3.5 rounds, and if it's a decent line there, I'll take a shot with the under. And Andreas Hale, you want to make JDS an official pick at -170?
Yeah, Dos Santos is an official pick for me.
All right, now let's move on to the co-main event, Zack, Otto, and Sage Northcutt. This is another interesting fight. The reports are that Otto is very excited about this fight. He accepted it without even any kind of hesitation, coming off his big win over Mike Pyle. And Otto is also fights as a natural welterweight, and Northcutt has not done well so far in the UFC at welterweight. But I guess he's not looking to make the weight cuts that he's had to make in the past, and so he's preferring to fight at welterweight now. Otto thinks that's a mistake, and Otto is very high on this one. Thinks he's going to have a relatively easy time getting a win here over Northcutt. Northcutt, though, is still very young. We don't know what improvements he'll make from fight to fight. Can we assume that Northcutt is going to improve over in this fight and over his subsequent fights after this one?
You know, it's funny because I don't know anymore. You know, at one point I felt like he would, but I feel like he's been thrown to the wolves early. That those losses can do a lot of damage to a fighter's ego, especially a young fighter's ego, and they may never be able to recover. On the other hand, they could recover. I'm not sure what we have left here with Sage Northcutt. He kind of scares me because he's a great kickboxer, but it doesn't necessarily show it in MMA fights, and his grappling needs work, and his ground game needs work. He's easy to put on his back. So there's a lot of things about Sage Northcutt that scare me. Should he be the favorite? Probably. Zack Otto's not a great talent. You know, he beat up Mike Pyle, who was pretty washed up at the time. But if Northcutt can keep the fight standing and show some improvement, he should win the fight. But I just don't know what we're getting out of Sage Northcutt anymore. Yeah,
this is a tough one. The line hasn't moved that much, and again, there's no total out. But the fight going the distance is +110. The fight not going the distance is the favorite right now at -150. I could see this one going to the cards.
I can too. Northcutt is pretty tough. Unless you submit him, you know, he can take some punches. Otto's pretty tough too. I know he got knocked out by Li Jiliang a couple of fights ago, but Northcutt hasn't necessarily seemed like this devastating finisher either. So I could definitely see this fight going in the distance. It could get ugly. It could be a grappling affair. But I think these two are going to be in for the long haul.
And what do you think about Northcutt fighting at welterweight? You think it's a mistake?
No, I don't think it's a mistake. He's a pretty big lightweight, so I'm not surprised at the move to welterweight. I don't know when he's going to come into his own. That's it. Yeah. The skill thing is something mentally with Sage Northcutt. When he gets in the octagon, the cage door shuts. It doesn't click yet. So maybe it'll happen. It took a little bit for Max Holloway, and then he took off. But I don't know if Northcutt has that dog in him.
Okay, and so Otto's a big win over Mike Pyle. You're not as impressed as some people were after he got that big knockout, showing off his improved striking?
No, Mike Pyle was at the tail end of his career. You know, if it wasn't going to be Otto, it was going to be somebody else to get that finish on Mike Pyle. So I'm not too surprised. I'm not, you know, it's not something that I would put in the bank and say that's something I need to look at going into this fight. So I tend to take that with a grain of salt.
Okay, well, a lot of unknowns in this one. I'm not sure who I think is going to have the edge here as far as getting a win is concerned. I'm thinking that maybe the over and the fight going the distance might have some value, although I'm not sure about this one or that one either. Are there too many unknowns here for you, Andreas Hale, or is there a pick you want to give?
Too many unknowns for me. The line is real thin. There's not a lot of value on either side. It's just I have no idea what I'm getting out of Sage Northcutt here. I'm going to stay off it. I need to see more out of him.
Okay, and then we have Glen against Dennis Bermudez, two guys who are angling to get into, the top 15 in the rankings. And Bermudez, you see this a lot, a big favorite who's been losing to top competition over his last few fights. Bermudez is actually 2-5 in his past 7 fights, dating all the way back to like 2014. But he is a minus, 245 favorite here. At least that's where he was a few days ago. Let's see where that line is moved. Yeah, it's right where it was a few days ago. 246 minus 250 at SBR odds right now, and I don't know. Glen is a pretty well-rounded fighter. I'm not sure he should be this big of an underdog here. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I'm really surprised. Given Dennis Bermudez, his last 7 fights, he hasn't been terribly impressive. He has been stopped. He has been knocked out. And then you look at Glen, who's pretty solid, like you said, all the way around. I'm surprised he's this big of an underdog. I would favor Bermudez, but not by this much.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth a bet, though, on Rick Glen? Let me see what the best line is right now. Again, the props aren't out, and maybe the props will have more value if you want to take a shot with Glen. But at Pinnacle right now, plus 214. Is that big enough underdog odds there for you to think it has some value?
Yeah, I lean heavily. I'm not going to make that official pick, but that's something if I had some extra money, I would absolutely throw it at Rick Glen because he shouldn't be this big of an underdog.
All right. And as far as the total is concerned, the market definitely expects this one to go to the cards. The fight going the distance right now, 5 dimes, minus 280. Fight not going the distance is plus 200. Do you agree with that assessment currently by the market?
I do. Bermudez is pretty durable. The guys he's got knocked out by are guys who hit really hard. Jeremy Stevens hit really, really hard. Chan Sung Jung, he's a hard hitter. So Bermudez is pretty durable, and it's the same with Glen. So I typically see this thing going the distance.
All right. So you think that Glen's style of fighting will enable him to maybe get is the only way that Bermudez can get beat by a guy who hits hard? Is Glen's style of fighting going to allow him to be a good bet relative to market odds to get a win by decision?
Yeah, I mean that's the issue here because Bermudez is a guy who loses close decisions. So it seems like if you watch his fights, he's a guy that you don't know what you're really scoring at the end of the day. It's gauge control. You don't know what it is. Yeah. So Glen could take advantage of a few of those holes in Bermudez's game and win a decision. It's a tough pick. That's why I can't make it an official one because Glen is well-rounded, but he's not an exceptional striker. He's a solid striker, which is not necessarily good enough to beat Bermudez. But again, he just shouldn't be this big of an underdog.
Yeah, another wacky fight. I'm thinking maybe Glen at plus 214 or Glen by decision when that prop is out might have some value. And now let's talk about another wacky one. Chad Mendes against Miles Jury. Of course, Mendes has been off for more than 2 years. He had a couple of knockout losses and then the drug test failure. So not exactly sure what we're going to get from Mendes here. Nevertheless, he is a favorite over Miles Jury, who is not a great fighter necessarily relative to Mendes, but a technical fighter. Should Jury be this big of an underdog here? About plus 160.
Yes, he should be right around plus 160. What he opened at, he shouldn't have been at. I think he opened around like plus 210, which was I would throw all my money at Miles Jury for that because we haven't seen Chad Mendes in almost 3 years, and the last time we saw him, he was getting knocked out by Frankie Edgar, and before that, getting knocked out by Conor McGregor. Obviously, Miles Jury is not that fighter, but he's been in there. Cage rush could be a factor. So he should be this much of an underdog because Mendes is still an excellent wrestler. He can put you on his back and hold you there for 3 rounds. So that's very possible. Sure. But at plus 160, that's where it should be. At plus 210, I would have been on Jury.
All right. It's actually not plus 160 right now. It was plus 160 yesterday. Miles Jury has taken some money. It's all the way now down into the plus 130s. And the best line on the other side, line chopping here at SBR Odds, is at Pinnacle for Mendes at minus 150. Is Mendes maybe worth a shot at minus 150? Because from what I've been reading, Mendes is training well and ready and raring to go. And it seems like maybe the 2-year layoff, 3-year layoff might not matter here for Mendes.
Yeah, Mendes is still relatively young, so at minus 150, I'd actually take Chad Mendes. Again, one thing that you don't forget is the muscle memory, and that's his wrestling. And it has nothing to do with striking. Mendes is no dummy. He's going to take this to the canvas, and he's going to drag this fight out as long as he possibly can and smother Miles Jury. And that's what I fully expect him to do. At minus 150, I'll make Chad Mendes an official pick.
All right, minus 150. That's an official pick from Andreas Hale at Pinnacle right now. I'm line shopping here at SBRodds.com. And yeah, let's see what the total might be here on 5 dimes. 5 dimes has where is that one? It's the fight going the distance is minus 120. Not going the distance is minus 120 as well. So the market uncertain as of right now whether it's going to be a finish or not. What do you think is more likely?
I think it's more likely for it to go to decision. I think it's more likely that Chad plays it safe. He wants to get a win and get back in the win column here. So I think that's highly likely. But again, it's one of those things you never know. A guy who's been out for 3 years could be a completely different fighter. So, yeah. But I'm banking on Chad being what he's always been, is that's being a wrestler.
All right, that's an official pick from Andreas Hale. Chad Mendes at minus 150, and maybe when the props come out, Mendes by decision will be a big underdog line that might have some value. Then we have Randy Brown against Nico Price, and of course the Kat Zingano fight. Is there anything with either of those 2 fights that you think might have some betting value?
I always like Nico Price because he's a finisher, and he's the underdog here. And Randy Brown, yeah, he won his last fight, but, I mean, he's not terribly impressive. So I like Nico Price as the underdog here. Even at plus 105, I'll take it.
All right, well, right now at SBR Odds, I can see that at Bet365, Nico Price is actually plus 110. So that's another official pick from Andreas Hale. Nico Price at plus 110, and the Kat Zingano fight's going to be a pass for you?
No, it's going to be a pass, but I do want to point out one fight that I'm really surprised about, and it's on the prelims, the Darren Elkins versus Alexander Volkanovski fight. Darren Elkins is a huge underdog, and I think he's won like 7 fights in a row. And he's been the underdog in all of the fights that he's won. So if there's any time to pick Darren Elkins, it's at plus 270. Volkanovski hasn't necessarily fought anybody of much credibility. Elkins is being completely disrespected in this fight. That's a fight that I'm going to make an official pick because that line is just egregious to me. Volkanovski is very small. He's very powerful, but Darren Elkins just got a lot of dog. And if you watch the last few fights, this guy is known for these come-from-behind victories. So I like Darren Elkins a lot. He should not be disrespected like this again.
All right. Well, right now that line is the best line is plus 280 at Bet Online. Andreas Hale, whenever you see a line that seems way off to you, you always want to ask yourself, why then is the line where it is? Why is Volkanov such a big favorite here?
Well, they look at Volkanovski's last fight and they say, well, he's a heavy hitter. He's only lost 1 fight in his career. He destroyed Jeremy Kennedy in his last fight. I mean, if you watch the fight, he looked very, very impressive. But Elkins has proved to be incredibly durable. Against Mr. Burstack, he was almost out of the fight, came back and won, and probably the comeback of the year. So it's one of those things where it's, what have you done for me lately? And people look at Volkanovski's last fight and they say, wow, that's impressive. Rising prospect, Darren Elkins, a guy who's pretty decent, but he doesn't wow a lot of people. But the guy, again, every time he's won, he's been an underdog. This is ridiculous. So sooner or later, we got to catch on. And I think right now, at this particular line, you have to take Darren Elkins. All
right, great breakdowns and analysis, Andreas Hale. I think I'm gonna wait for the totals and props to come out before I make any official picks that go on my record officially. But Andreas Hale has given us 4 nice picks here for UFC Fight Night 133. Darren Elkins at plus 280. Chad Mendes, now that the line has gone down at minus 150, that's an official pick. Andreas Hale likes Nico Price at plus 110, currently at Bet365, and JDS at minus 170. Those are 4 picks from Andreas Hale. Thanks so much, Andreas. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.